All right, let's just jump straight into it. We're talking about a master of horror manga today, and it's probably someone you've never even heard of, Yosuke Takahashi.
And that right there raises a huge question, doesn't it? It's the whole reason we're doing this explainer. How can an artist who is so foundational, whose influence you can literally feel in today's biggest horror names, be, well, basically a ghost to a whole new generation of fans? Why don't people know him?
So let's unpack this. When you think about horror manga, who pops into your head? For most of us, it's Junji Ito, right? But if you really want to get into the DNA of modern Japanese horror, you got to go back a step. You have to look at artists like Takahashi. He's the one who really laid the groundwork for that very specific feeling of unease.
And here it is. This is the key, the big idea for this whole thing. His influence isn't something you can just point to on a page, like, oh, look at that drawing style, or what a cool monster design. No. His real legacy, his genius, is in how he told his stories. It's about making a deliberate choice, the choice to leave things hanging, ambiguous, and totally unresolved.
Okay, so where does a style like that even come from? To get it, we really have to rewind and go back to the beginning. We need to look at the time and the place that literally shaped his entire worldview.
So you look at this timeline, and it all starts to click together, right? He was born in Hokkaido, this remote, snowy part of Japan. And he grew up during this kind of chaotic period of economic growth, just soaking up TV, magazines, rental manga, everything. And on top of all that, he was self-taught. You put those pieces together, and what do you get? Freedom. He wasn't stuck playing by the rules of some fancy art school or the trends of a big city.
And this quote, this just nails it. It captures the feeling perfectly. Growing up in a place like Hokkaido gave him this deep-seated sense that the line between our everyday world and, the other world, it's just not that clear. It's ambiguous. The two worlds coexist, and that border between them is super thin, super blurry. And that one idea, that's the engine driving all of his work.
All right, now let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about his most famous work, Mugen Shinji. This is where you can really see that worldview in action. I mean, this series totally shattered the mold for what a horror story was supposed to be.
So, Mugen Shinshi translates to the Phantom Gentleman. And the protagonist, well, he's not your typical hero. He's not there to save the day or fight the monster. He's just an observer, a supernatural witness. And because he's not a hero, the stories don't wrap up in a neat little bow. A lot of the time, there's no big victory, nobody gets rescued, something strange just happens, and then it's over.
Think about how different that is. Conventional horror gives you a clear monster, a straightforward good versus evil fight, and, some kind of resolution at the end. Takahashi? He just tosses all of that right out the window. The threat is vague, the main character is neutral, and the world? It's just as unknowable and mysterious at the end as it was when you started. He just completely flips the script and what you expect.
And that's the whole point. See, the goal wasn't a cheap jump scare. It wasn't about some monster jumping out of a closet. He wanted to leave you with this lingering feeling, a sense of unease, the feeling that the world around you is just a little bit off. Like reality itself has been tilted just by one single degree.
But he didn't just stick with one thing. His style evolved. Over his career, you can see the source of that unease start to shift. It moved away from external strange things happening to people and started focusing on the strange things happening inside them.
So if you look at his early stuff from the 80s, you can see him laying the foundation. The horror was a bit more direct, more straightforward. The art itself was very clean, thin lines, kind of minimalist. But that core idea was already there, right from the start, this whole aesthetic of not over-explaining. He totally trusted you, the reader, to feel the horror without him needing to spell it all out.
But then, as he got further into his career, especially in the 90s and beyond, that focus really turned inward. Suddenly, the horror wasn't some monster from another dimension. It was coming from right inside us, from human desire, from simple misunderstandings, from our own anxieties. The fear became way more psychological, more mature, It was less of a sudden shock and more of a lingering aftertaste. He started exploring these really heavy themes, like aging and the fact that you can't go back and change things.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. Let's talk about his legacy. Why is it that his influence is so incredibly important, but at the same time so subtle? How can it be something that you feel more than you actually see?
Well, the answer really is in what his followers took from him. I mean, you look at a giant like Junji Ito, who people often point to as his successor. Their art styles are worlds apart, right? And that's because Ito didn't copy his drawings.
He inherited something much more profound, his approach to story. The courage to refuse a simple answer, the bravery to just let the mystery be. And really, this quote from Takahashi himself just says it all, doesn't it? I want to draw strange things as they are. Strange. That was his whole mission. He wasn't there to give you an encyclopedia entry on the supernatural or to explain away the weirdness. He just wanted to show you something strange and let it be strange.
So we come full circle, back to that crucial point. Takahashi's real contribution, his biggest mark on manga, was basically philosophical. It was this truly radical idea that a story doesn't need a neat ending, that sometimes the most powerful, most terrifying horror comes from the things we don't know and can't explain.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. His work really pushes back against our modern obsession with having an answer for everything. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In a world that demands explanations, that wants every mystery solved, what do we actually lose when we explain everything away?